Now, yesterday, Eskom reported a loss of 2.3 billion rand in the past financial year. It also revealed irregular expenditure of at least 19 billion rand, dating back to 2012. Now, Anton van Dalsen is in studio with us. He's a legal counsellor from the Helen Suzman Foundation. He's going to take us through Eskom's financial health. Thanks very much, Anton, for coming into studio. Now, it's easy, as we were talking off air, it's easy to get caught up in all of the numbers involved in the story, and they are vast. But from where you're sitting and from the eye that you've been keeping on this the very important story of Eskom, what is the state of this power utility?
I think one shouldn't get bogged down on the numbers in the financial statements. Whether it makes a 2 billion loss or profit is in the longer run not that important. I think what is very important, though, is that Eskom needs to focus on certain fundamental issues. And I think one of the main things is that demand has been stagnant for almost 10 years now. So there's no extra money coming in unless the tariffs increase. It has a massive capital expenditure program with new power stations, which has to be funded. It has massive new debt, which has to be not only repaid, but interest paid on that. And one can see from the financials that the operational cash flow that Eskom has is not enough to cover its debt service obligations.
Now, yesterday, Jabu Mabuza, the Eskom chair, was saying that he has confidence in Phakamani Radebe as the new CEO. He can see that there, for lack of a better phrase, light at the end of the tunnel, and that Eskom will find its feet again. What's your take on that?
I think there are two very encouraging things that came out of the release of the financial statements yesterday. And if one moves away from the numbers, I think the first thing is the very strong stand that they are taking against corruption, which is very encouraging and in stark contrast to the previous top management. And the second thing is that they have announced that they are taking a strategic review, which is due in September this year. And I think this is the fundamental issue, that Eskom has a business model that is no longer fit for purpose. It needs to do an overall review of its operations, of demand, and where it wants to place itself in the economy. This is the most fundamental thing, and there are a number of issues that they need to think about in the strategic review, which are very important. One is demand doesn't seem to be increasing, so that will have to be dealt with in one way or another. The very big CapEx program needs to be funded. The annual report released yesterday admits that they are to a third overstaffed. In other words, out of 48,000 employees, 16,000 are superfluous. Something has to be done there. And finally, they need to give a proper think or a review of where they stand with regard to renewables, whether it's wind or solar power. And up to now, Eskom has been rather dismissive. They have said that they can produce electricity cheaper than they can from renewables, but they're not comparing apples with apples, because they are using the costs of old power plants that have been written off long ago, as far as the capital expenditure is concerned, and purely taking the operational costs of those and comparing that with the renewable cost, which includes all the capital expenditure. And secondly, they don't mention that the latest renewable energy which is available has decreased in price very substantially, to the degree that it is now cheaper than building new coal or nuclear power stations. And in one way or another, Eskom has to think through the situation to see to what degree it can integrate renewable energy into its system. There are operational difficulties, everyone knows that, but they need to give it a proper consideration to see how this can be done, because it's been proven over the last year or two that the least cost energy for South Africa is a mix of wind, solar and gas. And Eskom needs to sit down and to see how it's going to deal with this.
Now, Anton, I want to talk about this latest development just over the past couple of hours or so. This capital injection into Eskom, it is a loan, as far as I understand, $2.5 billion signed with the China Development Bank. Now, the CEO is saying that it takes them, and I quote here, takes Eskom out of ICU and puts us on a comfortable footing.
I haven't seen the details, it's only just been signed, but my impression is that it will relieve some of the immediate pressure. But the fundamental issues which I mentioned remain, and these need to be looked at.
Yeah. And of course, they're still in negotiations as well with unions. Those negotiations ongoing. Unions, I mean, they're just not backing down on the issue of bonuses, housing allowances, and wage increases. Who's going to foot the bill if Eskom doesn't get its house in order?
Well, there are two avenues for Eskom to foot the bill. One is through the consumer, but the energy regulator has been very hesitant to raise the tariffs to a very substantial degree.
Yeah, consumers are grateful for that, I'm sure.
And the other avenue is government. Government is 100% shareholder of Eskom, and if there's any bailing out to be done, I'm afraid government will have to come to the party. The problem there is that government's room for maneuver as far as its fiscal position is concerned is not very fortunate. So if any money needs to be pumped into Eskom now or in the next few years, that money will have to come out of the state budget.
All right, well, thanks very much for coming into studio and shedding some light on this very complicated story. Anton van Dalsen, a legal counsellor from the Helen Suzman Foundation.